Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. This is Austin Linney here, and I have, we'll just call her famous TikTok star. She had a previous crazy career. Now she's in Nashville, and I told the story to you when we met the first time. But I was staying at my boy Ryan's house, my real estate partner, and we were like, "Who's this like Stay Minty group?" Because we're like seeing them everywhere. And that's you.
Yeah.
So here we are. Life is funny. So what I like to do with my guest, Miss Garrett, is I like to let them start their story where they want to, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Arizona, ended up in Southern California for college at USD, and immediately needed more action in San Diego and found myself in LA. I was working in the entertainment industry for a little while. I wrote some screenplays and in my early 20s, 21, 22, I definitely wanted to be a producer, and ended up actually, while working at all these talent agencies and New Line Cinema and in that whole world, I ended up starting a clothing line on the side, just as a little side hustle, passion project. And it actually just organically just took off. And so kind of pivoted my career into the fashion world. I mean, I'd always loved fashion and designing and being creative, and went to school for business. So kind of started my own business, and that transformed into a pretty large clothing manufacturing company. We manufactured all around the world. I mean, Bangladesh, Guatemala, obviously China, Mexico. I had a factory in LA with 100 cutters, sewers. We had 50,000 square foot warehouse. I mean, we were selling everyone from Forever 21, Walmart, Target, Kohl's to, even Nordstrom, Saks, Bloomingdale's. We had a kids line, juniors line. It was just a wild and crazy time. And it's such an interesting way to start your business career in the fashion industry, especially in juniors fashion, because it is just such a low margin, tough business, and it's fast moving, and you really do have to be pretty creative and also business savvy to kind of, roll with all of those large competitors selling those stores. So it was a really, really good intro to business, intro to the private equity world, because then I kind of did a deal in that whole private equity space. And then I actually moved on from the company in, I think, 2016, started Stay Minty in 2018, again, very organically. I started it just out of looking at the real estate market and kind of space in Nashville in general, and seeing a real need actually at the time in 2018. There was bachelorette parties and bachelor parties coming to Nashville, and the rates were extremely high, which means obviously not enough supply. And then also there was a lot of Airbnb listings that were saying no bachelor parties, no bachelorette parties. And to me, that was just a huge kind of window of okay, this is the customer that's coming to Nashville. And they're paying these huge rates, but then there's hosts saying, don't stay here. So to me, I was wow, well, that's a business right there. Loved Nashville real estate in 2016, 17. I thought it was just a super up and coming, trendy, cool place to be. And I thought it was very undervalued. So to me, kind of going in that space and taking the risk didn't feel that risky. Obviously, there was a lot of legislation moving around the whole STR and permitting space. So the risk side of kind of making my first move was that, yeah, I'd buy a property and then it wouldn't be a short-term rental due to legislation, but I'd have, a killer long-term lease house. And I felt really good about really the neighborhoods that I was looking in to purchase. and as far as like, an equity standpoint and just appreciation play. So got my first place and the rumors were true. The rates were high and occupancy was pretty good. No, not much seasonality. And so when the legislation did change, I just continued to buy properties that were in commercially designated zones. So kind of hit the timing pretty right. The city kind of figured out what it was going to do from a runway standpoint, go forward on legislation. So I was able to navigate that pretty easily. And yeah, just grew this business really as just organic, as a fun, creative outlet. I love real estate. I still love design. And so, yeah, for me, it was just like seeing an opportunity and kind of filling that need, and also creating a portfolio, an investment portfolio for myself, um, to kind of store my wealth and also just have a little fun managing a business.
And you talk to people every day that, they spent 5 years on a business plan, built out every mission statement, value statement. And it seems like through your career, it's kind of been like, I like this thing, this excites me. I'm just going to kind of like start here and kind of see what it goes. Was that like by design, or is it just kind of like it just happened that way of like, I'm going to pick something that I enjoy and then boom, the clothing business took off?
Yeah, I think both of them are, like you said, are similar in terms of really like nailing down like the core values of yourself and for yourself and what you enjoy and what kind of lights you up, and marrying that with like an opportunity in a particular market. And I think that, if that space is there and, you're passionate about it, the business is going to kind of find you from there. And so that's really what it's been all about. And I think it shows when, a business owner is super passionate, it gets you up in the morning, it, gets you to that really, that it gets you in that space where you can tell that it's something special.
Were you acting CEO in the clothing business like throughout, or did you hire it out? Like, so right now we're closing on a business in like 2 weeks, and I'll have 25, 30 employees, and like that's a thing, and then like to go from like where you went, which was like a couple employees, to like I got 100 factory workers, like that's like for me is like the biggest gap in my brain of like how you manage 100 plus people. Were you doing that actively, or did you have somebody in that role when you got bigger?
Yeah, so I remained the CEO the whole time that I was there. In the very end, when we did a deal, we got a president. But yeah, I mean, scaling the business in terms of people is definitely a challenge and a pain point for, I think, a lot of just business owners, especially depending on your growth trajectory, right? I mean, how
Hmm.
fast is that dial spinning, and how many people are you going to have to acquire in a short amount of time is never an easy thing to do. I mean, people marrying the right people in the right positions is definitely a whole nother art and science.
And I think the biggest thing, your mom, I think the biggest thing for me is like my body might be somewhere, but my head's somewhere else. Like, did you have the same trouble with the clothing business? Like, could you ever turn it off, or was it nonstop, just 24/7?
So it was a big problem with the clothing industry because you're dealing with all time zones. So you're constantly having to talk to China, having to talk to South America, and then obviously managing the business in your own time zone. I mean, it is like a 24/7 business, and a lot of stuff that happens on China time, which is literally our night, is something that you have to be present for, because you're talking about hundreds of thousands of units on the line for a particular one buyer, one store. A day makes a difference in getting it through customs, or your order gets canceled. It's pretty high stress in that regard. Obviously, I had a ton of people working for us and good people, but it still requires just it's a lot of stress in that way.
So when you finally made the decision to balance out and sell and kind of transition your life, like how long do you think it took for you to, I guess decompress is the best word I could think of. Like how long did you take that time for yourself, or did you start something? Did you get into Stay Minty like right in the same time? Like how long did it take for you to like recalibrate back to like being
A
just
human?
hanging out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay, wait, I am an actual person. I am not just this one thing in the world. Yes, that time it definitely has to happen. The decompression time, 100%. I it's a process. I think that, and a lot of other kind of people that I've talked to that have kind of made a transition through what you're talking about. It definitely kind of makes you look at your identity and go like, oh, wow, I am not just, a clothing person.
Hmm.
um, and that's a little bit confronting. And, it's definitely like almost like a midlife crisis kind of period where you're like, wow, what am I going to do with my life? All this time I have now, who am
Hmm.
I? Blah blah blah. So I think you have to take the time after a huge transition like that, and I did. I actually, ironically, went back to doing some screenwriting, and during finishing up a couple of screenplays that I wrote, uh, that's when Stay Minty developed during that time as
Okay.
well.
So,
So
it's interesting, right? I know because I know my role, I know what I bring to my partners and my companies. When I find myself in a creative rut or I don't have ideas, I know I'm not right. Like that's when it's been a long enough time when and I know like some people would say, "Oh my God, stop thinking of business ideas." But when I don't have business ideas, it means that I don't have, I'm too stuck in what I'm doing. And so, that's kind of my barometer. That's why I laugh because our business broker on the deal that we're buying is in LA right now, and she just had two Christmas movies made, and she has three TV series coming out, and she's like, "I'm just doing this because it's something I've always dreamed about. And now it's kind of taking off." And she's like, "It's kind of crazy to like, talk to her, and then I see it on Netflix, and you're just like, well, that's really crazy." And I'm like, what does your mom think?" And she's like, "She thinks it's like absolutely crazy." And I'm like, "Yeah, I do too." But that's a creative outlet for people that I don't, like I study. I think human interaction is an art form, and I think everything is an art form. Business is an art form, and so when I read the book Big Magic, it was like if you don't get out your creativity, she wrote "You Pray Love." If you don't get out your creativity, then it's going to pass on to somebody else. If you don't write your song, it's going to pass on to somebody else. Like Michael Jackson said that he had to write every song because he knew if he didn't, Prince would get the song.
uh,
And it's like crazy, right? Because you wrote screenplays, and then boom, you birthed this new business, this new idea. When you got into the Airbnb space, interesting time. The regulations are live. It's starting to get, I remember that time very clearly. It's starting to get more and more popular. Um, you know, in my opinion, maybe you've structured it differently, but now you're entering another business that needs that 24-hour attention. So like either you're a glutton for punishment or you just like kind of these aspects of business that did you know it was so intensive when you first got started in it? Like hospitality wise from a hotel point of view?
yeah, that's a great question. Yes and no. I mean, I definitely, either business that I started, I didn't know exactly what I was getting into, and I think that can be a very good thing or a bad thing. But the good part is obviously you don't see a lot of the negativity before that stifles the creativity and stifles the kind of momentum that you have in the beginning when you have the passion to kind of get going. But it when I started, I definitely tried to source just the best operator I could from the get go because
Mm-hmm.
I knew what I didn't know. So I found someone local who had a really strong technology background in the space who was doing it with, that was before the regulations. He had a ton of units that he had to shut down, but so he was great to kind of help me get going and kind of handle that heavy lifting and that side of the business. And I've just really stayed focused on not growing too fast and trying to do things just like only take on projects that I feel like are fun, that are extremely true to the brand, not trying to run and get to some destination. Like I'm really just kind of in the here and now with this thing and having a good time. And I'm always, like you said, like looking for creative outlets to add to the business that I think would add value, obviously, to the market as well. Which is like then during COVID, how we started the glamping
Yes.
portion of the business,
I
and
was
then
just
how
I was
we
just
started
about
the
to bring it
glamping
up.
domes.
And I had an idea this morning for a business that you would be perfect for. So we'll talk about that offline because nobody can steal this amazing idea, and it's
Okay.
in the Smokies too.
Okay.
So you're doing Airbnbs in Nashville, and then which is, I mean, we'll just call it buzzword central at this point. Glamping, off the grid things. You get this idea to do the glamping site. Kind of walk us through, probably what everybody's dream property. I know it's been on my radar for like 5 years. I have it in my head. I talk about this kind of off the grid, no cell phone service property.
Yeah. So it was during COVID when, again, like you said, when things get quiet, the ideas start churning and it opens up this space to find, what is that next thing. And that was during COVID when just on social media and kind of seeing the trends, the whole outdoor thing just exploded. And the glamping domes and the glamping is pretty big in Europe. They've done some really awesome, creative, cool things, super inspiring from this like eco-conscious way of either living or obviously for unique experiences in the hospitality space. And just seeing that really got me going, like, oh, this is awesome, obviously, for right now during COVID, because really no one knew how long it was going to last. And Nashville was a pretty shut down for us. We had long-term leased some spaces and then kept some spaces for short-term rent. So we did have a lot of time to kind of work on, how are we going to pivot here? So I sourced some properties, looked at raw land at first. Undeveloped raw land was a little bit overwhelming for me in terms of like all the steps and the timing. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to be 5 years before this thing is up, and that just not developing before. I wanted to try to find something that had a little bit of the work done for me. So I actually landed on this property that had a really cool lodge in front of a creek, and it had 20 acres. This woman had refurbished this old barn into this beautiful little lodge, and she had 18 acres where she had installed a 6-bedroom septic tank that was already approved and had a few like roads, and there was already a well on the property. So I had a lot of approvals going into the thing that made me feel like, okay, well, if this thing is like totally blows up in my face, like I at least have, a lodge, I have a property. So I'm going to be making income the second I close on this property because we're going to rent the lodge. It's turnkey. So I kind of had that going for me. And then just knowing that the septic system was already approved by the health department, I was really able to start building pretty quickly because getting through civil and county just on your plan is the easiest part of the process in terms of timing. And the health department and doing like water stuff is really what takes a long time. Now that stuff kind of got me in the back end because I mean, there's always, there's just always problems when it comes to development. So
Yeah.
this thing wasn't a slam dunk by any means. It was a lot of risk, heavy work, a lot of problems to solve. But initially, upon taking the risk, I was like, okay, there's a lot here that is, a good start.
I think one of the number one things I've seen, because I've consulted on multiple projects like this, these things are very, very hard to get financed from lenders. They just don't like them. They don't even understand what it is. They're not happy about it. I've watched, 15 not get across the table. Um, did you fund it yourself? Is that how you got it across the thing, or did you have investors in there? How did you get that? How did you get them? How did you get it done?
Yeah, so you're totally right because I talked to several banks as well, and they're like they don't even know what it is. Like,
Mhm.
what? So yeah, I knew before going in, and that was also a part of my mindset of getting the property with the lodge. I could finance the purchase of basically the infrastructure that she had set up. I mean,
Hmm.
it doesn't sound, like that's that much of investment, but I think the time aspect of what was already there is a huge part of it. And then, so I did obviously finance the initial purchase of just that raw land and the lodge, and then I did it myself. I just felt like I was very confident about the idea, but it being so unique and not done before. I mean, I didn't really feel that comfortable going to like investors yet. I really wanted
Hmm.
to prove out the model on my own.
Yeah. I mean, that's so smart, and it's that's the way to do it. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, these things just fall apart left and right, and that's why I tell everybody that I help. I said, build some part of some structure, whether it be RVs or cabins, where these guys know they can actually see, like, okay, that's the thing, because they will not. You have to like slowly build in the vision as you're going. Uh, how has it gone? Has it stayed booked like straight through? Is it busy? Is it like did it start off slow? Like how's it performed?
Yeah, so it's such a learning curve because it is definitely a different asset class, right? I mean, this is hospitality on a kind of ranch level, camping level, like a mesh of a whole bunch of things. I think the big mesh of what I'm speaking to is like you're getting this guest that is notoriously not an outdoors person, and you're like getting them outdoors into like a glamping experience that they think is like not anything close to camping, but it kind of is. Like there's no insulation. Like, yes, we have water, we have dishwashers, we have, toilets, showers, like all the awesome amenities, and they look really cool online. But like people call us for bugs. We're like, no way. Did you really call for bugs? Like, how many times do we have to tell you, like, you're going for the outdoors? So that has been a learning curve. Sending people out for bugs. I'm like telling my team, I'm like, we've got to get these guests to understand a couple bucks is okay. Like, nothing is infiltrated with, like,
Yeah.
you
No,
know,
go to Costa Rica. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's been a learning curve. I think initially opening too from a marketing perspective, I wasn't prepared from a marketing side that I was going to have to do that much. I already knew there was a ton of demand based on the competitors being booked out so much, and just kind of figured that the demand was there if we were kind of showing up on Airbnb and, Google, and we were in a great area being in the Smoky Mountains, that it would kind of fill up. But I think because it's so unique, it's still kind of training like people on exactly what it is and how cool it is, and getting those reviews, people trusting you, or like thinking that they're going to show up to like a porta potty and, a tent, and it's going to be nothing like what it looks on online. That was so it was a little bit of a slower start, but now that we're like 10 months in now, and I mean we stay very, very occupied. I mean, even
Mm.
I was expecting not really to be very open in January and December, but just because of the cold, I mean, every weekend we're booked, every single dome. I mean, people
Amazing.
want to come in the winter. So I've hit within my projections in the first year, even with that slow start. I didn't hit kind of where I want to be, and I think this year we will. It needed more runway and more time
Yeah.
than I kind of initially thought.
100%. Now to the question that I'm sure has everybody baffled. So you're doing all this, and you're a mom.
Mhm.
How many kids do you have?
So I have 3 kids.
Okay. So you
I
have three
have
kids. You're running businesses. How old are they?
13, 12, and 8.
Okay. So everybody's question: how do you do this? How
How
do
do
you
you
do
do
all
it?
this with the kids?
Yeah, I guess I've just always done it. look, to me, it's a creative outlet. It is more than just like work. So it's something that kind of lights me up, gets me going, and is super fulfilling. So I think it's just understanding that, you need to have that balance in life. Like as a mom, like I'm still a human, I'm still a person, and I want to also inspire my kids to like nurture their soul and who they are and express themselves out in the world. Like
Yeah.
show a female daughter that, hey, you're passionate about building stuff. You want to build like a cool cabin or a glamp ground. Like if that's where your passion is, like go out and do it. Um,
Hmm.
no, don't just sit around and kind of wait for the best time. Wait till you don't have kids, or wait until the kids are out of the house, or that's just not how life works. I don't think like there's never the best timing. You just kind of got to go with the flow of, okay, I can balance things and make this happen. And yeah, so you kind of just you get a good team too, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you have to have people supporting you, and you have to be
Yeah.
willing to accept that support, and that's risky because
Hmm.
then you're betting really on yourself, right? Because if you're getting all these people to support you and support your vision, then it's like it puts the pressure on. It's like, okay, now you got to go. Now you got to
Yep.
go. Now you got to do it.
You're
You've got all these people. And so I think sometimes it's just the pressure and not believing in yourself that kind of stops people. But yeah, I mean, even male fathers, I think, they they're going to have the same type of pressures and up against a lot of the same things. But yeah, so you just kind of go.
Love it. I believe that one of the parents' main duties is to chase their passions and live their best life to show their kids they can't. And I think that's my hope that every parent does that. What I think would be interesting is what advice would you give to your younger self now that you're sitting in this position when you started that side hustle clothing business? Like as you sit here, you've been through it, you're sitting here, you've launched two successful businesses now. What would you have told her when she was just thought she was starting like a side hustle and scared and didn't know what was going on? What would you tell
um So I think in the beginning I wasn't really scared. I think when it gets scary is when you start actually like getting a lot of people on the payroll and like things are starting to happen. You're like, whoa, I don't know how I got here all of a sudden. But I think I mean I think the main advice is to really just stick to your core and always remember like your roots and how you got going, because I think it's
her?
very easy to look at competitors and be like, oh, I want to do what they're doing, or I want to be like that person, or, and it's like, well, no, what's really going to like make you shine is literally just being you and creating what you want to create. And a lot of times that hasn't been done before. And that's
Hmm.
the cool stuff that really makes a difference and is really going to light you up. And so I think there's been times throughout, kind of when I was younger where I'd pivot, but in a direction that was towards like what the rest of the maybe industry was doing. And those moves were never really right for me. And any time I had like slam dunks, we did big deals or had really good successes, it was always because I followed kind of my ideas, my gut, kind of who I was, and not really followed the crowd.
I love it. Amazing advice. So we're in a time where the real estate market is interesting. I call it a drunk Mexican standoff, where the sellers still think it's COVID crisis and the buyers are exhausted because they've been in a fight with Mike Tyson.
That's
So
funny.
we're having kind of a standoff. What's your vision of T and kind of your projections over the next 2 to 3 years? What are you looking at, and where would you like to see the company go?
So you cut out for a second. Will you repeat that?
Oh, I was just saying, so like, where is your vision of the Stay Minty over the next 2 to 3 years? Where do you want to take the company? Where do you see it going? Kind of your vision as you continue to grow the brand?
Yeah, so I still definitely look at deals that are super special properties. So very, very high premium properties. I think there's still kind of the decent sized margins that I look for in the market. I think where the masses are in those lower price points, I think the margin is just way too slim to be interesting for me.
Hmm.
So that's kind of where we're looking as far as like the company the next 2 to 3 years. I love this outdoor glamping, unique spaces. Um, whole new asset class that I see developing. I think there's a lot of runway. I think, like you said, I mean, banks are still, it's going to take them a while. It's going to take capital a while to enter this market. So I think that's good and bad. I think there's a lot of runway to kind of get some stuff going before heavy competition enters the market. So I still see like high returns in that space for kind of like the foreseeable future till that money is like starts really kind of coming in, maybe 4 or 5 years from now. And I think that you can't really pull it out of people that they love going out into the outdoors after COVID. And these young kids that are these Gen Z and they love Instagram and they're posting everything to TikTok. And I think that they're all about just traveling around and not putting roots down. I mean,
Hmm.
all of the, friends that I have that are in that like 25 to 28 range, and every time I talk to them, they're like in some another fabulous place working remote, and they're taking, videos. But I'm just like, I love your life. Like that
Hmm.
is that is
No,
awesome.
100%.
So
No, so
I think
great.
that also plays into it too. So I do love the space, and it's challenging. It really is. So I
Hmm.
do see a barrier of entry, just based on the fact that it is not a typical hospitality industry.
I love it. And so if people want to follow Stay Minty, they want to find out about your stuff, where do they do that at?
Yeah. So our Instagram is StayMintyXO, and then I'm on LinkedIn, Meredith Garrett, and our website is stayminty.com.
And guys, I've been in the space a long time. The quality of her properties and the thought process put in the design and the execution is some of the best I've seen. So do yourself a favor, go stay at them. It's you're not going to be disappointed. It's something that I love. I've got my own ideas, but I'm going to go buy a bunch of companies and then fund these things myself, so I don't have to talk to lenders. That's my game plan because I'm over lenders right now. But check out her website, check out the TikTok. It's everywhere. And if you got some value from this, send it to a friend. We'll see you next time.